My wife let her new man claim my stepson's college fund, so I quietly pulled the 529, documented every lie, and let their tuition fantasy collapse. The sound of meat sizzling on the grill almost masked the sentence that changed everything. "Don't worry about tuition. I've got it," Brent said loud enough for the whole backyard to hear. It was casual, like ordering a beer, like it cost him nothing. He even added a friendly clap on Jason's back. The kind men give boys when they're claiming territory. Jason beamed, proud and clueless. Mara laughed too loudly, like she wanted the neighbors to hear it in case they missed the announcement the first time. Greg didn't flinch. He turned the burgers, letting the smoke rise into his eyes instead of tears. His hand didn't shake. His jaw didn't twitch. He didn't say a word. He'd spent the last 14 years building a future for Jason, sacrificing vacations, bonus checks, nights out. 529 contributions came before everything. He'd skipped the new truck. He'd skipped the trip to Alaska. And now here he stood, spatula in hand, being erased in real time like a typo in someone else's fairy tale. But instead of reacting, Greg simply nodded. A few of Brent's buddies laughed. One even raised a beer to him. "That's what real men do," someone muttered. Brent puffed up. Mara slipped an arm around Brent's waist like she'd forgotten which man grilled the food they were all stuffing their mouths with. Jason ran by, catching a football, yelling, "Did you see that throw, Greg?" "I did," Greg said, managing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. That night, once the paper plates and beer bottles had been thrown out, once Brent had driven off with Mara in the passenger seat under the excuse of dropping off some supplies, Greg walked into his office. The room was silent, except for the hum of the old ceiling fan he kept meaning to replace. He sat down at the desk, entered his credentials, and opened the portal. The 529 account showed $86,224.17. 14 years of steady deposits. Quarterly statements filed, bookmarked, archived, notes in the margins about interest, growth, and projected college costs. A little folder labeled Jason Future sat in his drawer, stuffed with tuition estimates and notes from guidance counselors. Greg hovered the mouse over the transfer funds button for a full 30 seconds before clicking. He moved every cent into his personal brokerage. Nothing illegal, nothing secret. He updated the account beneficiaries, removed the auto deposits, printed the confirmation, and filed it in a new folder marked Final. He stared at the screen a while longer. Then, as if on cue, his phone buzzed. A message from Mara, a selfie. She was sitting in a spa chair, cucumbers over her eyes, a flute of champagne in one hand. Brent's wrist was visible in the background, unmistakable with that stupid leather bracelet he wore like he was a 22-year-old on spring break. Much-needed spa day. "Kiss Mark," she'd written. Greg didn't reply. He didn't even smirk. He just deleted the photo and opened Excel. Tab after tab he began documenting, not just numbers, events, quotes, screenshots, conversations, everything. They didn't think he'd connect. There's a kind of silence that feels like glass, fragile, reflective, sharp if you move too fast. Greg sat in it for 2 hours that night, watching the version of his life that existed only in his head shatter quietly, neatly, clinically. And hey, if you're still reading this and appreciate stories told with a steady hand and sharp edge, consider subscribing. It motivates the team to keep bringing you these brutal little truths most people are too afraid to say out loud. Back in the kitchen, a half-finished burger sat cold on a paper plate. Jason had made it special for Greg with pickles and extra mustard. Greg left it untouched. He knew what was coming. They just didn't know he'd already started. The next morning, Greg made coffee with mechanical precision. No cream, no sugar, just heat and bite. He poured it into the chipped mug Jason had made in 8th grade art class, the one Mara kept threatening to throw out. It was ugly, crooked, and completely his. The house was empty. Mara had left a sticky note on the fridge. Gone hiking with Brent. Don't wait up. Kiss Mark. Cute. Greg carried the mug to his office, the same office they used, to share before she decided she needed more space for her crafts. Now her crafting was mostly done at Brent's place, or in Brent's truck, or wherever married women rediscover their wild side. He sat at the desk, logged back into the 529 portal, and checked the history. Every contribution was there, every deposit, every quarterly yield, $86,224.17 to be exact. It had taken 14 years. He remembered the night he set it up. Jason was 3. Mara had just moved in with him. And she'd cried when he said he wanted to start saving for college. "You're not even his real dad," she whispered. No, but he was the one who planned for Jason's future when her ex wouldn't send more than a birthday card. Now Brent, the contractor, who called free application for federal student aid. that fast food application or whatever, was publicly claiming credit like he'd spent a decade making lunchbox notes and walking the boy through algebra. Greg clicked transfer. No hesitation this time. It was gone in less than 60 seconds. Shifted into a personal brokerage account with no ties to Jason, no ties to Mara, and certainly none to Brent. Notice, guys, no subterfuge, just removed. If anyone ever asked, he'd simply say, "There's no legal obligation," and he'd be right. A soft ping drew his attention. New message. Mara again. This time it wasn't just a selfie. It was a full-body mirror shot. Her in a robe, legs crossed, champagne in hand. Brent behind her in a towel holding a phone like they were filming a skin cream commercial. Caption, "Spa vibes with my man sweat droplets," yellow heart emoji. Greg stared at it for a long time. Not with rage, not even sadness, just inventory. He clicked delete. Then he opened one note. He titled the page False Narratives. Underneath he started typing. April 3rd, Brent claims he'll cover everything. April 6th, spa day. While Jason is on a college tour. April 7th, remove myself from free application for federal student aid login. He cross-referenced statements, logged every photo, every call, every absence. Then he printed the tuition estimator again, this time for private universities just to watch the number rise, just to taste the moment they realized fairy tales cost more than pillow talk and Pinot Grigio. He updated his estate file, removed Jason as beneficiary for the education clause, left him on the life insurance. Fair's fair. Greg's breath steamed slightly in the cool office air. His hands were steady. His heart didn't race. He didn't have a revenge plan, not yet. But he was building something better, a front-row seat to their delusion, and a paper trail so clean you could serve hors d'oeuvres on it. It started with Mara humming in the mornings. That was the first sign. She wasn't much of a morning person before, but now she floated through the kitchen like she'd won something, wearing yoga pants that hadn't seen yoga in years, flipping through college brochures with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Oh, New York University has a media program. Jason would love that, right?" she asked without looking at Greg, then answered herself. "We'll add it to the list." The brochure pile grew by the day. University of California, Los Angeles, Vanderbilt, Emerson. Schools that didn't even bother pretending to be affordable. Schools with dorms that looked like boutique hotels. Schools where alumni connections meant more than grade point average, and where tuition started with a 6-digit number. Greg didn't say no. He didn't say anything. That weekend he walked into his office, logged back into the 529 portal, not out of doubt, just to make sure the balance read 0. It did. He canceled the recurring monthly deposits anyway. Left a little note in his ledger. No more feeding the fantasy. He updated his password, then turned to his will. Jason was still in it, but the education trust clause was gone, replaced with something simple. Assets to be distributed upon death to legal dependent at time of passing. No need to spell it out. Let Mara and Brent fight over the semantics someday. He kept the life insurance intact. Jason was still a kid after all. But if Brent wanted to wear the crown, he could wear the cost too. Meanwhile, Brent was getting bold. "Already paid the dorm deposit at Lincoln," he said one evening while sipping craft beer in their backyard like he'd built the house himself. Knew a guy from back in the day who's tight with the admissions office. Greg raised an eyebrow just slightly. "From back in the day, huh?" Brent smirked. "Yep, he owes me one. Got him a good deal on drywall for his cabin in Telluride." Greg nodded slowly. "Huh. Yes, that's how college works now." Brent either missed the sarcasm or didn't care. Mara giggled like a schoolgirl. She didn't notice Greg's subtle glance toward the empty beer bottle in Brent's hand, the same kind Brent left everywhere like a signature, even in the master bedroom. Now, Greg had counted 4 in the last 2 weeks. One of them was sitting beside the nightstand, half full and dusty. Jason, for his part, was beaming. He didn't understand the game yet. He still thought this was just how families worked. Adults making sacrifices, cheering him on, rallying behind him like it was senior night at a football game. Greg didn't correct him. Instead, he bought a small lockbox for his documents, printed out every tuition projection Brent had mentioned, every school Mara listed on her vision board, every line item on the fantasy budget Brent and Mara assumed someone else was handling. Then he booked a 3-day cabin trip in the mountains for himself. When Mara saw the confirmation email, she blinked. "You're going away alone?" "Just some fishing. You know, real men's stuff," he said, folding the brochure from their latest college pick and sliding it into the recycling bin. She rolled her eyes. "You never used to be this passive-aggressive." Greg smiled faintly. "I used to think this was a team." And then he left. No argument, no speech, just silence. By the time he returned, Jason had toured 3 more colleges. Brent had posted a photo of himself in a campus bookstore, captioned, "Soon-to-be college dad life." And Mara had scheduled a second parent meeting with Jason's future advisor, without Greg, of course. False confidence bloomed like mold under a leaky sink. They felt in control, untouchable, triumphant. Greg let them. Jason stood in the kitchen one afternoon, fidgeting with a water bottle label like it was the only thing keeping his hands from shaking. He was never good with words when it mattered. He'd always been more action than emotion, more football cleat than piano keys. But now, on the edge of adulthood, he seemed to realize something had shifted. "Hey," he said quietly, "I just wanted to say thanks for everything." Greg looked up from the countertop where he'd been slicing cucumbers. "Yeah." Jason nodded. "I know it wasn't always easy with, Mom and school and stuff." He shrugged. "But you were always the rock. Just wanted you to know I see that now." Greg blinked once, twice, looked away, his throat locked up. He hadn't cried since his father's funeral, but right then, the weight of 14 years hit him like a freight train wrapped in a hawk. "Appreciate it," Greg managed to say, voice steady as not so much. Jason smiled. "You good?" Greg nodded. "Always." Jason lingered. "So Brent said you moved the college stuff into his hands, that you were okay with him taking over the financial part?" Greg wiped the knife, placed it neatly beside the cutting board. "That's what he said." "Yeah. I asked him how things were working with the 529 or whatever, it's confusing. And he was like, relax. My certified public accountant's got it." Jason mimicked Brent's smug cadence. He said, "You two sorted it all out." Greg leaned back against the counter. "Well, that's one way to put it." Jason studied him. "If you're okay with it, I'm not going to argue. Just seems weird. You were always the one who handled that stuff." Greg wanted to laugh, but it would have come out wrong, sharp, bitter. So instead, he kept it simple. "I made my contributions." Jason furrowed his brow. "What's that mean?" Greg reached into the fridge, pulled out a soda, handed it to him. "Means I did my part. Now Brent gets to do his." Jason took the can a bit slower than usual. "Okay." He didn't sound convinced, just confused. That loyal kind of confusion where your instincts say one thing, but your heart wants to believe the story being spoon-fed to you. Later that evening, Mara and Brent came through the door like they owned the air. Brent dropped his sunglasses on the counter and declared, "Got the housing info from Lincoln. Going to book it this week. Might upgrade to the premium meal plan too. Jay deserves it." Mara chimed in, "We should look into a laptop stipend. His current one's ancient." Greg, sitting on the couch, said nothing. Jason, emboldened by the earlier talk, asked, "Did you get the 529 details yet?" Brent waved his hand like he was swatting a fly. "I told you, bud. My certified public accountant is handling all that. I've got a guy, he'll move it around. Whatever, all covered. Don't stress." Greg watched his stepson nod slowly. There it was. That pause, that moment when a loyal heart takes its first crack. Jason didn't press, not yet. But something shifted in the way he looked at Brent. That night, Greg walked past Jason's room. The door was slightly open. Jason sat at his desk, phone in hand, laptop open to a free application for federal student aid help page. He wasn't asking for help. He was trying to understand. Greg moved on silently. He knew what was coming, the questions, the unraveling, the moment Jason would realize the Emperor had no tuition, but not yet. For now, he let the silence keep breathing. Let the boy lean into his own instincts, because loyalty isn't blind forever. It just takes longer to open its eyes when it's built on love. It came over breakfast, the kind of confrontation Mara preferred, casual, smug, performed in slippers with a coffee mug in hand. Greg was reading the paper at the table, actual paper, not the screen, the way he always did on Sundays. Mara poured almond milk into her granola like it was a declaration of independence, and then launched her opening shot. "Greg," she said lightly, "don't you think it's time you stepped aside? Let Brent handle Jason's stuff moving forward." Greg didn't look up. "Stuff, she sighed, swirling her spoon, tuition, forms, deadlines, the bigger picture. "You've done your part and we appreciate it, truly. But Brent's got more resources now, better connections. He's more plugged in." He turned the page without responding. Mara took that as license to continue. You've always said Jason isn't biologically yours, right? Brent's offering to step in. That's generous. Most men wouldn't. Greg folded the paper slowly and set it aside. Looked her dead in the eye. "I always said I raised him." "Right. But now that Brent's here." "You mean now that Brent's paying to play?" She blinked. "That's not fair." He stood, walked to the filing cabinet, opened a second drawer, pulled out a single envelope he'd prepped weeks earlier, sealed, labeled, mailed to her name, no return address. "What's that?" "My resignation," he said. "From what?" "Power of attorney for all educational matters. Free application for federal student aid, loan counseling, university communication, health records. It's all yours now. Yours and Brent's." For a moment, she didn't know what to say. She reached for the envelope, fingers trembling just slightly. Then, like always, she caught herself, smoothed the doubt, straightened her back, smirked. "So, you're finally being decent." Greg's face was unreadable. "You can call it that." He turned and walked away, pausing only to grab his keys from the hook. As he left, he added without looking back, "I hope Brent's certified public accountant is as good as he says." By the time the screen door slammed, Mara was already texting Brent. Greg, meanwhile, drove straight to the bank. He had two tasks. First, he removed himself from the custodial oversight of Jason's scholarship fund. It was a small one, a state grant that required a parental CO signer for disbursement. He'd been that co-signer. Now, he wasn't. Second, he visited his lawyer. A few signatures later, Greg had rewritten the contingency clauses in his financial directives. No access granted to Jason or Mara until Jason turned 25. Conditional on enrollment status and independent income, the lawyer raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Let's just say I'm no longer interested in subsidizing their fantasy camp," Greg said calmly. He left the law office with a manila envelope tucked under his arm and a faint smile that didn't belong to someone who just stepped down. Back home, Mara walked around like she'd scored the final touchdown. She set up new passwords on the free application for federal student aid portal, forwarded Brent the access codes, booked another round of campus tours. She even posted a Facebook status, "Letting go is hard, but trust is everything. Blueheart New Beginnings." Greg didn't comment. He just updated the folder names in his private cloud drive. Changed Jason College to Jason Legacy. Different kind of investment, longer term. And this time, no one else had the key. Jason came running down the hallway with a kind of unfiltered joy Greg hadn't seen since he was 10, and found a stray puppy in their backyard. The boy, well, man now, was holding his phone in both hands like it was the Holy Grail. "I got in," he shouted. Greg looked up from the newspaper, calm as ever. "Which one?" "Watson University. Full acceptance. No conditions. I'm in Watson. Private Northeastern. Legacy admissions. 40% rejection rate even for the qualified." Greg had seen the numbers. He knew the tuition, $63,000 a year, not including housing, books, and the weekly pizza fund Jason would inevitably drain by week 3. Still, Greg smiled. "Proud of you." Jason hugged him, a full hug, arms around the neck, tighter than usual. "Thanks, man, really. I know things have been weird lately, but I wouldn't be here without you." Greg patted his back once. "You've worked hard, you deserve it." Jason beamed and sprinted off to call his mother. The next hour was a blur of squeals, phone calls, social media posts. Mara updated her status twice. Brent sent a group text with a photo of champagne and a caption, "Told you he'd make it. My boy's going to run the world." Greg said nothing. That Friday, Brent hosted a celebration dinner at some fusion place that charged $17 for arugula and ambiance. Wine flowed. Brent did his usual performance, giving toasts, laughing too loudly, announcing that money should never be a barrier to dreams. Greg wasn't there. He didn't even please reply instead. While Mara wore a sequin dress Brent probably bought on credit, and Jason posted boomerangs of clinking glasses, Greg sat in a leather chair across from his attorney, finalizing a letter he titled Closure Package. The letter was plain, no venom, just documentation. The full 529 withdrawal receipt time-stamped. Copies of email exchanges where he'd offered to split education duties before being told to be decent and step aside. A notarized resignation from power of attorney, a statement confirming he no longer held legal or financial obligation for Jason's education. He wasn't sending it yet. Not yet. The moment wasn't ripe, but it would be soon. "You want this served?" his attorney asked. Greg shook his head. "No, I want it mailed, regular postage. Let it arrive like a birthday card no one asked for." The attorney chuckled. "You're cold. I'm thorough." As he walked out into the evening air, Greg passed a young couple taking selfies in front of the courthouse fountain. For a split second, he wondered how many of those relationships ended in quiet detonations like his. Smiles on the outside, strategic withdrawals inside. Back home, he poured himself a glass of rye. No celebration, no music, just one ice cube, and the sound of the ice cracking against amber. The phone buzzed. A group photo. Jason, Mara, Brent, the wine. Caption, "Watson, here we come." Dream Team, Family First. Greg stared at it, saved it to a folder named Narratives. Then he powered down the phone because he knew something they didn't. The louder people celebrate the illusion, the harder they fall when the invoice arrives. The envelope wasn't dramatic. It didn't arrive by courier. No wax seal. No flaming sword, just plain white paper. University letterhead tucked between a Home Depot flyer and a past-due water bill on Brent's cluttered kitchen counter. He didn't even open it at first. Thought it was some welcome packet or branded merchandise, the kind of thing colleges send to make parents feel good about flushing $60,000 down a granite toilet. Then he saw the bold numbers, the kind that don't whisper. Fall semester balance, $31,452 due August 4th. His jaw locked. Brent read the letter again, slower, line by line. Tuition $63,000 annually. Scholarships 0, grants 0, expected family contribution $63,000. 529 account allocation not available. Not available. He called the Watson University finance office so fast he knocked over a bottle of fish oil pills trying to reach his phone. "Yeah, I'm calling about my son's tuition invoice," he said, trying to keep his voice level. "There's supposed to be a 529 account covering this." The woman on the other end didn't blink. "Can I get the student ID number?" He gave it, typing. "There's no 529 plan on file. Our records indicate the account associated with this student was closed in April." Brent gripped the edge of the countertop like it owed him something. "That can't be right. I'm just telling you what I see, sir. Check again." Pause. "I did. It was formally closed. Balance zeroed out. We have no other education savings plan attached to this student." He hung up mid-sentence. "Mara." He needed Mara. She answered on the third ring, chipper, probably still riding the high of being that mom in the public display of affection group chat. "Hey babe, I'm at the store getting wine for the next college planning night. The 529's gone." "What?" The college called. "No money. It was closed months ago." Silence. Then sharply, "Greg." Brent was already pacing. "Didn't you say he handed everything over? That you had the login? That your friend helped you? Transfer control?" Mara stammered. "He said he stepped back. He sent me a resignation letter. I thought that meant—" "You thought—" "I assumed he left it to you, to us." "He didn't. He pulled the plug." Mara sat down hard on the bench outside the wine shop. Brent rubbed his face, trying to will away the numbers. "I've got some float in the business, but not $60,000 a year. That's liquidation territory. Can we apply for aid with what?" Jason's financials are still tied to Greg's tax returns. Free application for federal student aid deadlines passed. Mara's voice trembled. "Call your certified public accountant. Maybe he can—" "I don't have a certified public accountant," Brent snapped. "That was something I said to sound competent." Silence again. The cracks were showing now, not just in the plan, but in them. The smug glances, the "we've got this" energy, the champagne-fueled fantasy of being the new power couple. It all crumpled under the weight of a single sheet of paper. Mara exhaled, barely above a whisper. He knew. Greg knew this would happen. Brent's voice was tight. "He let us walk into a trap." "No," she said. "We ran into it." And somewhere miles away, in a house quiet enough to hear the grass grow, Greg sipped coffee and added one more item to his folder, labeled, "First Fracture." By Monday morning, Brent was already 4 hours deep into what he called damage control, which looked a lot like panicked Googling and unanswered voicemails to banks that didn't care about charisma. He tried applying for a Parent Plus loan. Denied. Credit score flagged for delinquent commercial accounts. He tried using Jason as a dependent cosigner for a private student loan, but the rep on the phone coldly explained, "Your stepson was never listed as a beneficiary on any verified education fund. We can't use that for collateral." Brent started sweating through his shirt. He even looked into a hard money loan, but the broker laughed when he said the purpose was college tuition. "You'd be better off selling your truck," the man said, not joking. Meanwhile, Mara tried to keep up appearances, but her hand shook when she poured coffee. Jason was texting her from school, asking which forms he needed for orientation, whether Greg had sent over the immunization records, the ID card application, the housing deposit. She gave vague answers. "We're sorting it out." She barely made it halfway through the replies before she snapped. Greg was in the garage sanding the edge of an old table when she stormed in like a tornado in yoga pants and fury. "You son of a bitch!" Greg didn't even flinch, just kept working the grain. "You knew he got in. You knew the deadline was coming. You sat there letting us play, letting Jason get excited while you drained that account and left him with nothing." Greg exhaled. blew a small cloud of sawdust off the tabletop. I didn't leave him with nothing. I left you and Brent with a choice. You just made the wrong one. Oh, cut the cryptic crap. You're a coward. If you didn't want to help, just say it. He wiped his hands clean on a rag, walked past her into the house without a word. She followed, still barking. And don't pretend this is noble, it's petty, spiteful. You knew we were relying on that money. Greg reached his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a slim folder. Inside was a printed spreadsheet, neatly tabulated, dating back 14 years. Every deposit, every monthly contribution, every quarterly report, right down to the final withdrawal with timestamp, transfer ID, and balance verification. He placed it on the counter between them like a weapon with no bullets, just cold, blunt force. Mara stared at it. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Greg finally spoke, calm, level. I didn't hide anything. I didn't spend it. I didn't steal it. I removed it because I was told very clearly that Jason's future would be better off with Brent. She flipped the page, saw a note Greg had added and pinned beneath the final transfer. Contribution ceased upon being told to step aside. She looked up at him, but there was no anger in his face, no smirk, no pleasure, just the same stillness she used to mistake for passivity. He poured himself a glass of water. Mara's voice dropped to a whimper. Jason didn't know. He didn't deserve this. I agree, Greg said. But you made sure he'd never hear the truth from either of you. She closed the folder slowly. The sound was deafening in the silence. Then she left. No dramatic exit. No more yelling, just the sound of her sandals on the tile and the weight of a life unraveling on paper. The knock on Greg's apartment door came just after 8 p.m. Not frantic, not angry, just hollow, like someone who had no idea what to expect on the other side. Greg opened it to find Jason standing there, drenched in guilt and exhaustion, clutching a crumpled folder like it was the last buoy on a sinking ship. His eyes were bloodshot, not from rage, from collapse. I didn't know, Jason said, voice cracked. I swear, Greg, I didn't know any of it. Greg held the door open, didn't say a word, just stepped aside. Jason walked in like the floor might give way beneath him. He looked thinner, or maybe just smaller, like all the imagined adulthood had been stripped away in a matter of days. He dropped the folder onto the kitchen table. Mom finally told me about Brent, about the account, everything. She said, you gave up on me. Greg raised an eyebrow. Is that what she said? Jason sat down hard, his shoulders slumped like a man twice his age. I feel like an idiot, he whispered. Brent said he had it covered. The money, the connections. He kept calling me champ like we were buddies. And I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Greg poured 2 mugs of coffee, set one in front of him. No creamer, just how Jason used to drink it when he was trying to act grown up. I saved for you, Greg said softly. Every month through layoffs, through fights, through years when I didn't know if I'd still be in the picture. Jason looked up, face a mess of disbelief and shame. I did my part, Greg continued. The rest wasn't up to me. Jason nodded, eyes filling again. I should have asked sooner. I should have noticed. No, Greg cut in. You're a kid. You believed your mother. You trusted people who said they loved you. That's not your failure. That's theirs. Jason's mouth quivered. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. They were going to take a loan in my name. 25 years of debt for a lie. Greg leaned back in the chair. That's one thing. Truth's another. At least now you've got one of them. Jason reached into the folder and pulled out the spreadsheet Greg had given Mara. This is everything. Greg nodded. Jason stared at it. You really put all this away for me? Every birthday party I skipped, every upgrade I didn't make, every time your mom asked why I didn't want to live a little. This was why. Jason tried to speak. Couldn't. The phone on the counter buzzed. Mara again. Greg didn't even glance at it. Jason looked at him. You're not going to answer? Greg sipped his coffee. I already did. 14 years worth. Jason cried then. Not loud, not dramatic, just slow, tired sobs that came from the place inside every kid where trust used to live. Greg didn't rush to comfort him. He just sat there, let it happen because some truths can't be softened. They have to be felt. Outside, it started to rain. Inside, a boy stopped pretending to be a man. And a man who'd been treated like a ghost finally became the only person in the room who hadn't lied. 3 months later, Brent's Ford F-250 sat on the edge of a dealership lot with a red sticker slapped across the windshield, must sell, motivated owner. The custom rims he bragged about were gone, swapped for stock replacements. The truck had once been his personality on wheels. Now it was just leverage. He signed the papers with a grimace and a shallow joke about downsizing for the planet. The sales guy didn't laugh. The check didn't cover much, one tuition installment, maybe two. Definitely not the housing deposit Jason had to front himself. Brent told Mara he'd make it up next quarter when the contracts hit, but the contracts were dry, the business was bleeding, and the bank wasn't interested in promises made over steaks and India pale ales. Meanwhile, Mara had started wearing beige again. She picked up extra shifts at a boutique she used to scoff at, selling overpriced candles to bored wives who reminded her too much of herself. She smiled on cue, folded scarves, and reapplied concealer during lunch breaks to cover the stress blooming beneath her eyes. The wine night stopped. The family vision board came down. Her Facebook updates turned quiet. No more hashtags, no more matching college hoodies, just the occasional repost about growth being uncomfortable and healing being nonlinear. Jason adjusted. He deferred a semester, picked up part-time work tutoring high schoolers in algebra, moved into a cheaper dorm off campus. He asked Greg once, just once, if there was anything left. Greg said, "I already gave you the foundation. It's your turn to build the house." Jason didn't argue. He didn't beg, he just worked. And Greg, he was in Oregon by then, standing on a fishing boat with three men he'd known since before Mara had braces. They told the same stories they always did, laughed at the same terrible jokes, cooked fresh trout over an open flame, and cursed at the rain like it owed them rent. Greg's phone buzzed once. A text from Jason, "Thank you. I'll learn the rest." He read it twice, smiled, typed back, "I believe you will." Then he powered off the phone, tossed it in a dry bag, and cast his line into the fog. The world kept spinning, but the noise, the shouting, the lies, the pretending was miles behind him now. Because in the end, dignity doesn't make headlines, it doesn't win arguments, it doesn't scream back, it just waits. And when the dust clears, it's still standing, quiet, whole, unshaken, like Greg.